Openshaw here. I am known as the Green Smoothie Girl online for 18 years now. And in March of 2020, I planted a flag for medical freedom. That was really always what I was about, but I was teaching habits. And people maybe were a little confused that they saw me as the Green Smoothie Girl teaching healthy habits. I was always about teaching you habits that would get you free of this circle the drain medical system. So of course I was going to be pro free choice about your health decisions. And then in March of 2020, I became aware that we were going to be in a world of hurt economically. And I think right now, 4 years later, we're about to feel the lag effect of all the shut down supply chains. I didn't believe 2 weeks to flatten the curve, didn't believe it for a minute. And so I started to think about, as they started printing money and banks were being bailed out. They had a bank term funding program, the PPP loans for small businesses, and then there were the ERC loans, and they were really grants that you didn't have to pay back, and people were stoked because they could stay home from work, and especially working class people could just collect a check. And there were people who were making a lot of money, more than they had been when they were working, just on what I call the dole, the government dole. Well, it's all fun and games, except that everybody else is getting that money too. And so what that does is it makes our dollars worth less. I remember where we were in Park City. Do you remember when I was explaining to you, like, what happens when you put, like, I didn't know it would be $7 trillion at the time. That's the estimate, is that the U.S. government printed $7 trillion. I'm like, what if you have an economy that has $20 trillion that's just changing hands and circulating through the economy? And what happens if you dump another $7 trillion in it? Well, all of a sudden your dollars are going to be worth less. And it's not really even all of a sudden, it's over time. So I'm starting a YouTube channel. It's going to be Robyn Openshaw Bitcoin. Pretty sure it's up right now. You could go subscribe. But I'm just going to be sharing short videos on how I ended up radically changing my finances. I had 25 real estate properties, and in 2022, I sold almost all of them. And I have continued to buy Bitcoin, and I am buying Bitcoin in the last 24 hours, even though it's at $103,000, $104,000 right now. And I want to share more with you over on my new YouTube channel, Robyn Openshaw Bitcoin, because I think women especially are not waking up to this and how this affects us specifically. I think GenX really needs to pay attention to what's going on with Bitcoin. If you would have told me 2 years ago that 11 U.S. banks would be approved by actually very hostile to crypto Securities and Exchange Commission, I wouldn't have believed you. If you would have told me 2 and 4 years ago, since I've been running a mastermind teaching people about these subjects, that we would have a U.S. president who on his first day in office had come in buying $47 million worth of Bitcoin, and more than twice as much Ethereum. So what does it all mean? Where do I keep my Bitcoin? What's a cold wallet versus a warm wallet? What do I do with custodying it? Do I self-custody it, or do I use one of these companies? There's now, I think, 68 of them that are helping custody your Bitcoin so that it's totally safe and no employee can steal it. You know, if you think that because we've always known banks, that makes banks safer, consider this, that our banking system can't even, most of the banks in America can't even join FedNow because they literally, technology-wise, can't, because they're built on COBOL, which is a programming language they quit teaching in the schools in 1980. So literally when I was a high school freshman, they quit teaching the programming language that your bank is built on. So in case you're having really frustrating experiences with banks like I am, or if you're worried about your institutional risk or your third-party risk of having your money held in banks, okay? Nobody's When you go let's say you put your $5,000 paycheck in the bank, if you think it's sitting there in some vault in cash, that's not what it is. When you give them $5,000, they immediately go invest it. And so if everybody were to want, or a large number of people were to want money out of the bank, they don't have it. They don't have it. In March of 2020, I was so freaked out realizing that they were shutting down supply chains all over the world and that it would affect my business. Not only did I start studying Bitcoin, because I knew that Bitcoin the last Bitcoin would be mined in 2040. And so they can't print more and debase the currency with Bitcoin. So at the time, it was people's money. It was getting my excess energy or my store of wealth or store of energy out of the dollar that was going to be debased. And it has been. We've probably lost half of our purchasing power in just the last 5 years. So that's what it was for me in March of 2020. I bought my first Bitcoin. I bought at $8,000. You don't have to buy one whole Bitcoin. You can buy in Satoshis. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. You can buy however much you can afford. I will be happy to share with you over my new channel, Robyn Openshaw Bitcoin, why specifically GenX needs to get involved. If you want a safety net for your children, stashing cash isn't the answer. Money markets, not necessarily the answer. Any bond that you could buy right now is going to be negative yielding relative to inflation. You're going to actually lose money in any bond, short-term T-bill, long-term bond. So let's talk about it. I want to talk to GenX because we're the smallest generation, I think, in U.S. history, right? Because our mothers were all told that if you stayed home and took care of children, that you were a loser. And so our mothers were the first ones indoctrinated that had to get out there in the workforce. And so we were the latchkey kids. I wasn't. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but a lot of times I would go home to my friends' houses and they let themselves in. They had Doritos and Twinkies and stuff that I didn't have at my house because my mom was actually there and she actually cooked the food. So we were the smallest generation, but we had more kids and we had a big millennial population. We're our children. And the millennials are losing hope, and those are our children. And you're only as happy as your least happy child, if you agree with that saying. And here our kids are despairing of ever being able to buy a home. So, you know what? The millennials have their gift back right now. They can buy Bitcoin and they could be running circles around the boomers, but most of them don't know. So it's up to us. So I almost called my new Bitcoin channel GenX Bitcoin because there's Bitcoin for boomers, and most of the channels on YouTube are millennials. Millennials get it because they're more high-tech people. They understand that the future is digital. But I feel like Gen X is just being left out. I feel like women are being left out. Even in my mastermind, sure do love the men who show up in my mastermind, but in 18 years as Green Smoothie Girl, it's the community with the most men I've ever had. And I just don't want to see the women get left behind because they think, oh, I'm too old to understand that, or I'll let my kids figure that out. We really can't afford to sit this one out, you guys. We really need to learn about what is the blockchain. How is it disrupting virtually every industry? It's just moving the ground underneath us, and we can front end run countries and cities and counties who are going to be piling into Bitcoin. If you haven't heard this before, then you've heard it here first. But this is a thesis that I did not have 2 years ago. I could not have imagined a presidential administration coming in where every single member of the administration is pro-Bitcoin. The U.S. Secretary Treasury, as of yesterday, is pro-Bitcoin. We haven't had that before. The SEC Chairman, pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto. The President of the United States, in 2020, he didn't get it. But his sons are all over him. His cabinet are all over him. RFK Jr. is all over him. RFK Jr. has moved most of his wealth to Bitcoin, as have I. Got rid of my rental properties, really sick of tenant problems. It's a depreciating asset. That's why you can write it off on your taxes, the depreciation. That wooden box is depreciating, but it's what Americans understand about investing. So I think that Bitcoin is perfect money. I have been through an entire 5-year whole 4-year cycle plus. I want to teach you what I know. I want to help make it easier for you. When I started learning about it 5 years ago, I didn't have a learning path. I was out there just listening to random crypto bros on YouTube. And most of them were pitching some favorite project, most of which have died since then. And they really didn't have any background in investing money. They don't know what they don't know. They haven't had the experience of losing everything in an investment yet. So they just thought everything was going to go to the moon. And I just wasn't feeling good about that, but I really liked the idea of Bitcoin. Well, since then, in just 5 years, it has gone from being the people's money and something that we can store outside the bank with no point of failure, and we can spend money peer-to-peer, which we've never been able to do before except with cash. Cash is basically going away now, but we can do it across the world on a Sunday at 11 p.m. So this has never happened before. Bitcoin is heading into its second 15 years, and that brings up other issues, such as not everybody wants to do self-custody. Some people do want institutional custody, and I have been on the phone sometimes 3 and 4 and 5 times with different companies who are custodying Bitcoin for you so that you have more safety and security, layers of security. And you just don't have to worry about the stuff like I do. Like when it snowed here in the Panhandle, and I still have just a couple rentals left, and my tenants are like, our hot water heater isn't working, and I'm like, yeah, it's because it's really, really cold there. Santa Rosa Beach doesn't really have instant hot water heaters that understand sub-zero or below freezing temperatures, so they had no hot water. I mean, I've had everything from fines for having leaves on my lanai or my front porch roof with an HOA to, I don't even know, I have a list as long as my arm of all the ways HOAs have penalized me. I am just so glad to have a safe asset that's been de-risked. I want to talk to you in our next video about why Bitcoin has been de-risked. It's not just for nerds like it was 5 years ago. I'm sure before 5 years ago, before COVID happened, I would have looked at you like you had a third head. You would have tried to talk to me about Bitcoin. So I didn't really deserve to have 1 cent Bitcoin. The people who have that are literally worth billions of dollars now. We have all kinds of new billionaires because of just regular people who were Bitcoin nerds back in 2009, 2010. So I think there's massive upside still. Okay, it's still a very small minority of us who own Bitcoin, but your life is getting more expensive if you're sitting in dollars, and your life is getting cheaper and cheaper if you're in Bitcoin. So I want to teach you more. Go over and subscribe to my brand new YouTube channel called Robyn Openshaw Bitcoin, and I will be here for more free content. We have a mastermind I teach every Wednesday night for 90 minutes. I often have guest speakers, but it's at takeactionforfreedom.com, and you can learn more there. So I'll see you over in YouTube. Thanks, everyone.